The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, I'm Carl Seidel, host of The People's View, sponsored by the Nashua City Republican Committee. And if you want, we meet at the Crown Plaza the second Thursday of every month. And if you want to find out more information, you can go to our website at nashuagop.org.
Welcome to The People's View.
Hello, and help me welcome Joe Ross, running for representative in Ward 5, right?
Yes, that is.
Very good.
Thank
Joe,
you.
thank you for coming on. And you're new to this candidacy, and what made you decide to run?
Yes, I am. I was urged by some friends to run simply because they thought I could do a good job, and I think they favor the first thing I believe in, and that's absolute honesty. In fact, if I am elected, the first thing I will do is set up a website, and there's no such thing as things that don't get put on the website.
Oh, okay. And what you're describing what you're doing as if you're elected representative, how you're approaching the legislation and stuff like that?
I think it all goes back to my basic premise that the government should be smaller,
right,
and people should be able to keep more of their own money.
Okay. That sounds like a good slogan.
Much easier said than done, unfortunately, but that's my general aim.
Okay. Well, I think that the Republicans that have been elected up there have that aim too, but we have to get a Republican governor to make sure it gets through everything. Anyway, what areas do you think might be a first target?
Well, obviously, it's the budget of the state. The first problem I see is that departments do not start from what do we need. They start from what did we get last year, and then say, we want more.
Right.
More is absolutely the wrong word, especially for me. It should be less. And what's the least amount you can get away with and do what you should do?
There's no incentives there to really find a more effective way of running their operations.
Yes, there is, but we don't use them.
Well, we couldn't use them because we did try to get some kind of bonus things that were available. They have a bonus structure, but everybody they want to be fair and equal or something. And
at which point it's not a bonus.
That's right.
The way you do that, I think, is that if a department manages to come in under budget, we don't remove the excess and put it back in the general fund. That amount they can keep into next year's budget, even though they're going to hopefully justify less than that. That's the bonus. They can do something with their budget money that they might not have done otherwise. One possibility.
Maybe give us a little bit of your background. Why? What have you done in the past that makes you think that these skills that you've learned over the years are going to be applied?
Well, first of all, I've always been an administrative type person. I was a registrar at a college. I've been in a little bit of sales, but not much. I'm not a good salesman. I've designed business forms. I've run companies. I've had employees, most of whom like me, I think.
Okay.
So it's been a successful series of careers. Right now, I work out of the house, and I'm a publisher and an editor.
Oh.
So my time is my own. That means, by the way, that you get to work 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And all the hours you want for 25 cents an hour.
Yeah. What kind of editing do you do? I mean, what kind of?
Mostly novels, but it can
really?
be almost anything. I've done textbooks. I have a textbook now that just came out for a college professor who's teaching coaching.
Oh, really?
So we wrote that book, or he wrote it. I edited it and formatted it and had it printed. We also have done fiction. My wife and I have written a book called Fast Track for Caregivers.
Oh, really?
Which went over very well. It's the tagline is all the things you didn't even know you needed to ask. And it really has opened some eyes, including the eyes of some doctors who have seen it and reviewed it, and said, in fact, one doctor, a very prominent doctor, said to us that he even learned some things. Well, that obviously makes us feel good. So.
Well, it sounds like your business background is very applicable to how to run even the government, although it's going to be hard to convince them of that.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
So, but you said that you were looking at different areas that are prime for doing that. Can you give any other examples?
Sure. First, let's talk about the Highway Trust Fund, which of course isn't a trust fund so much anymore because someone in the legislature, or the whole legislature, or the legislature as a whole, decided that, well, let's take some of that money and put it over here in a different department. And then, of course, they come back and say, gee, we don't have enough money in the trust fund, so we should raise the tolls and raise the gas surcharge and all that. My answer is no, try using the money that you get anyway.
Yeah.
Don't take it out of the budget and you won't have that problem. So the infrastructure is not quite as bad as they make it out to be. They're not short money as much as they claim they are. That's the problem. Another area is voc rehab, for instance. Okay, I think they're spending too much on computers and other materials that they could do if they negotiated better. Negotiation, of course, being the key. Drug prices, of course, are out of whack because we don't negotiate, because of, I think, payoffs in the federal government, frankly, which prevents us from negotiating. That's the lobby power, obviously. Can't do anything about that on the federal level. We can certainly watch that stuff on the state level and on the local level. I think all of it goes back to immigration. And before everyone yells, well, we're a nation of immigrants, we are, but we're not. We are a nation of legal immigrants. Big difference between legal and illegal. When an illegal immigrant comes in, first, they're not guaranteed a job, which you have to do if you come in legally. You're not guaranteed of a sponsor, which you have to have if you come in legally. You don't, they end up, many of them end up on welfare and all the welfare programs. Unfortunately, that's a trickle-down. You've heard of trickle-down economics? This is trickle-down welfare. If the illegals take the welfare money, there's not enough left in the pot to take care of the needy people who happen to be Americans. Well, I'm a great believer in America for Americans and Americans for America. So those are the kinds of things that I would prefer looking at.
Well, you have some good examples. The Immigration Department, ICE, is just not really an effective operation. I mean, people wouldn't be sneaking over the border if they could come in fast illegally. They just don't process them, people like that.
The problem is that, unfortunately, our president decided not to enforce any of those laws. While he claims he's deported more people than anyone else, the fact is he's really not deporting more than anyone else, and he's letting in many more than he deports. He's also told ICE, from what I've read, not to enforce those laws. Well, frankly, you have to shut off the border. There are several ways to shut off the border, since you asked. The first is obviously give Border Patrol agents the power to do their job and back them up. Second, I would put drones on the border. Not armed drones, but drones armed with heat-seeking equipment that will tell us where the illegals are while they're crossing, so we can put resources to where they belong. A fence, well, that's part of the fence. I'm not saying you have to build a concrete wall. First of all, it's not going to happen. They're going to dig under it, but that's another whole story. So that would be the first thing. The second thing, when an illegal crosses the border, the first time, you fingerprint them, photograph them, send them back. The second time, you fingerprint them, photograph them, find that they've been here before, and you put them in jail. And you put them in jail for a short period of time and send them back. The third time, you put them in jail for a longer period. Fourth time, throw away the key.
That sounds like a good list of things to do.
Now, well, not done.
Oh, go ahead.
The next thing you have to do is go after employers who hire illegal aliens, because frankly, if there are no jobs for illegals, they're not going to be so apt to come.
Mm-hmm.
So you fine employers.
Yeah.
My idea of finding them, and of course this all has to be refined, is you take the amount of money that a legal person would have earned
Mm-hmm.
for the past 3 years. Multiply that by 3, that's the fine. If that puts a company out of business, tough. And the owner will be personally liable for that, which means if he has a nice house that he got because he was hiring illegals, the house is gone. I think that might stop it a little bit.
You might have a thing there. One of the other examples you used is the road fund, and I'll give you an example of something that did happen this year, and they never publicized this, and I'm trying to find out the exact sequence of things and what happened. The budget for the Department of Safety, which takes legally something like 27% of that fund to take care of state police and some other things that they associate with roads. But it used to be a slush fund where that kept inching up until it got to 35%, and then we pushed them back again. But this last year, there was an error in the budget for the Department of Safety. The $350,000 that they had for new police cruisers, somebody put a minus sign in front of it. So that gave them a $700,000 hole in their budget. Because not only did they have no money for the cars, but they had to buy the cars. So anyway, the immediate solution, because that was not discovered until after we had bought the cars and found out we couldn't pay for them. That's, again, how sloppy, I would say, the accounting systems in some of our administration. They took it out of the road fund because that was available quickly. Now, if they replaced it with other money, that's fine. I haven't been able to determine that yet.
And they probably haven't.
Well, we're going to find out, because if not, I'm going to put in legislation that they take it out of the Department of Safety's budget for the next year.
Now that's another problem I have. The Department of Safety, obviously that's safety, and I think that's an important function of government. Fund it the way it should be. When you fund it out of the road fund, you're really hiding it. I don't want to hide it.
Yeah.
If there's a need for X number of more troopers, put it in the budget. If that 27% and 35%, whatever it was, were in the Highway Trust Fund, maybe we wouldn't have to increase any other taxes, and it would be more honest. Let's
Well, I
tell
agree that.
people what we're paying for and what we're using it for. That's another failure of the government. I believe the law says that fees have to cover the cost of administering the program and nothing more, and yet that doesn't happen. Right now, most of the fees cover not only the program, but a little bit of profit. Not supposed to be a little bit of profit.
Yeah.
So I think
I agree. The whole thing has to be looked at completely. The other example along that line is that HHS still doesn't know what they spent in the last fiscal year. They haven't reported it, even though it was due in September.
Don't they have an accountant?
I don't know I cannot find out what is causing the delay, but they have to check the fund. They got until September to figure out what they spent up until the end of June. You know, it takes them that long to figure that out.
It seems to me if they had a staff that's doing it properly, they would know today what they spent through yesterday.
They should.
I mean, how do you know whether you're going over your budget
If
you don't know how much you spent?
That's the problem with it, but that's because HHS is so big that they just don't have any control over that.
Maybe they shouldn't be so big.
That's another thing that we could look at happening in this next year, because I think that is just the problem. It's too big. It should be broken up into 2 or 3 operations.
manageable
yeah,
operations,
right.
absolutely.
Right, and more logically structured. And maybe the Department of Safety is that way too, because another problem with them is that they're still using a lot of paper forms. Other departments are all digital, you know, and they have everything that you can communicate with them on the website. But Department of Safety is a little bit behind the ball.
Everybody should be doing that.
That's right.
I mean, when's the last time you paid a bill
Mm-hmm.
in paper?
Yeah.
I don't write checks very often.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I have a checkbook from my local bank, and they gave me 50 checks. I think it might have been 5 years ago. I still haven't
really?
used them. I mean, I've used a few
Yeah.
because obviously there are times you do.
Yeah.
I pay all my bills online.
Yeah.
When I get a bill, I put it in the computer. I'm done. As far as
Well,
I'm concerned, it's
and
paid.
most of the things that we have a system up there that shows the bills that are paid when they're paid, but it doesn't show whether they're on time or not, or you know how much delayed it is. You know, and they don't have a structure, at least in HHS, which tells them that hey, you're getting close to your budget limit, because they're at least 10% over their budget. We can't figure out what if it's 10, 12, or 14%.
And that's not difficult.
It isn't.
For instance, I get an alert from my bank anytime I'm within whatever number I said that I wanted to know, and it comes automatically. The other thing, when I go in and charge something with my debit card, and I do it as a charge,
Yeah.
it's no longer an available number,
Mhm.
even though the balance might be bigger.
Mhm.
The available balance is a little less, and that happens instantly.
Yeah.
Well, if it happens instantly for me, why can't it happen instantly for the state?
It's a good question. I don't
Why
know why
is
they're
it-
taking this so long to answer it.
Why aren't these things reflected when they're encumbered, for instance?
That's the other part of it. That's where you have to really have the control. As soon as you encumber it, you don't want to, you know, take it out of the same pot.
It's much like you charging something in the store.
Yeah,
As soon as it's encumbered, it's not available.
right.
End of story. Now you can't overspend the budget. The money's not there.
Yeah. But-
Those are things that an efficient state would be doing automatically
Right.
and every time.
I agree. So you can see what kind of job we have up there to get them to do it. But the other thing is, too, you need a governor who's looking after making their operation much more efficient and responsive to the needs. Because right now, after all the crying about all the drug money and everything that was in HHS, which she vetoed and now claims that she had a big hand in putting the budget together, she really didn't. Because she had requested $1 billion more, and we, you know, cut it back to what was needed. And she found out that she had a $20 million a federal grant that she didn't know about and didn't use when she could have used. So anyway, they still, and something in the paper the other day where they found out that the extra $3 million that she had to have for some rush program, they've only spent the $1 million of the $3 million we gave them out of the excess funds that we had available to us.
See, but that's a good thing. That's $2 million
Well, it's
we
good.
didn't spend.
We didn't spend it, but she's hollering that she needed it so much. Well, how come it's not distributed to those agencies that are waiting for it? And some of the things that are in the budget for the Health and Human Services with the mentally disabled and the disadvantaged people, handicapped people, there's still a waiting list to distribute that.
There are a couple of other things that should happen. First, I believe we should have probably a staff whose sole function is to go after grants, not only from federal government, but from private companies.
That's right, yeah.
Because
The
there are
foundations
grants
themselves.
out there, there's money available. We should get whatever we can of it, frankly, whether it's federal or private, doesn't matter. If it's earmarked, that's fine. I don't mind that either, obviously. That's the first thing. And I forgot what the second thing was. But we should be looking to reduce things wherever possible. And I think that's the framework of my entire running for office. is to
Okay.
reduce budgets.
Yeah, yeah. And you've had the business experience to know how to do that, what to look for.
I hope so.
Okay. Well, how's your campaign coming, and do you need any help and stuff like that? Do you want to talk to the audience that we have and say,
Well, frankly, I started with the assumption that I'm not going to spend any more money than I take in donations, of which I have actually 2, and I've purchased some signs from that. And that's it, because let's face it, the job is not what you'd call a high-paying job.
no?
In fact, I found early on that the $100 a year is all you get, plus mileage, but that doesn't count. Supposedly, that's a break even. But $100 a year, and then you have to pay for the license plate yourself.
Right, and they get taxes out of it too.
Oh, do they?
Yes. So you're only getting like $96 a year.
So it's 96, and then you have to pay for your license plate.
Right.
It's $65 a year.
Yeah.
Back to my 20 cents an hour type.
Well, it's. I know there's a lot of people that really have a desire to try to straighten things out, and I think that's what you're saying.
Yes.
And you can't see why they're not doing it when it's so logical to do it differently.
See, there's the problem. It's logical.
That could be. That could be.
The other thing is that obviously I'm not going to get any money from lobbyists because my views are my views, and they're not going to change with a lobbyist giving me money, so they're probably not going to give me any money for that same reason.
Yeah.
In a previous life, one of the things I did was I ran the area of the job where I was the traffic manager. And of course, that's one of those areas that you're always being taken out. Trucking companies back then, their instructions for the salespeople were you must take someone to lunch every day,
Oh, really?
and you must take someone to dinner at least twice a week. So the perks of being traffic manager were magnificent, and
Yeah.
I went to some things with my wife sometimes and lunch otherwise, in times and in places where I never would go otherwise because frankly I couldn't afford it. Okay, and I always made it clear to every salesman, I appreciate everything you give me, and I'm going to take everything you want to give me. It's not going to get you a pound of freight.
Yeah.
What's going to get you the freight is excellent service and taking care of me when I need to be taken care of in terms of rates, service, and efficiency.
Yeah.
And that everyone understood that. They still took me out. It's okay.
Ah. Well, that's, yeah, I think that's what I've found in the House. The lobbyists don't bother you as much as if you're in the Senate because there's only 24 senators to really influence. And they have been very helpful as far as giving you a lot of technical assistance for their particular area. They do know a lot, and they do have examples that are meaningful in your decision of what to do one way or another at the regulations.
But you also have to understand that they're giving you their point of view or their client's point of view to the detriment, perhaps, the other side's point of view. So you almost have to hope that there's a lobbyist on the other side who's going to give you the other side of the coin.
And there are frequently. There are a lot of associations, that maybe they're called nonprofit associations, that do give you reasons for looking at the other side of it. And it is something that you have to understand. You have to, ask the right questions.
Of course.
Because that's where they don't always give you 100% of the information. They might only give you 95%.
Well, it's interesting. In my publishing, I do lectures on publishing, editing,
Yeah.
and we give lectures on caregiving. And I always say that the only stupid question is the one you don't ask.
Yeah.
So my answer is ask all the questions you want. If they sound stupid, so be it. But there's no such thing as a stupid question.
Right.
There are some stupid answers, but there aren't any stupid questions. Okay?
No,
Now,
I agree with you.
In running, one of the things I've done is I've answered every single questionnaire. Now, you get as soon as you're on a ballot, you get
Yeah.
dozens of questionnaires. I've answered every single one of them. I don't even keep copies because my views aren't going to change
Yeah.
because based on who I'm talking to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So consequently, I also feel I'm not going to get too many endorsements because of that, because my
Yeah.
views are my views and I'm not going to change them for that.
One problem I have with those, I don't know if you run into this problem, is the way they ask the questions.
Well, of course.
And a lot of times I have to just answer, it depends on the details, you know. You know, they ask me, do I want to, well, if there's something like the expansion of Medicaid, in that case, I said I was against the expansion because I understand what the details are, and they're not the way I would have structured it. It would have been structured differently if I had my, you want to get people to have insurance available to them, but you don't have to do it the way they did it.
Exactly.
There's no controls on it, really. And I noticed that one, I'm trying to remember who it was. Maybe you can remember the questionnaire that came where they had a check mark with other and gave you 3 lines to write something in about that question.
I remember one that did give you a box to comment on each one, but
Right.
they were still yes or no.
No, this was, well, you know, you had one that said more or less you agreed with it, you didn't agree with it, you don't know, and then other. And other gave you a chance to say, well, I agree with it within certain restrictions, or I don't agree with it because.
I ran into that a lot
Yeah.
because the answer would be yes except for,
Yeah, right.
or no except for.
Right.
And it's very difficult. You know, I don't know how they record that.
I
I'm
wonder,
assuming
too.
they record the yes or the no,
That's it,
but
yeah.
it's not a complete yes and it's not a complete no.
Right.
There are times I might agree, there are times I might disagree. Again, depends on the circumstances.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
You know,
But
the other thing I've decided I'm going to do, or I will do, and in fact I do it now, is I will talk to anybody who calls me,
Yeah.
okay, and I'm in the book, but it's 603-897-0005, and I will always answer a call from anyone who has a question about my stance on an issue. They don't even have to tell me which side they're on,
Okay.
because frankly, it doesn't matter.
Well, the information will be at the end of this interview on the video. Okay, so people can contact you by going to that phone number.
Certainly.
Okay, and they can ask you more or less, you know, whatever they want to ask you, I assume.
Yep. I have no restriction on questions.
Okay, very good. Well, Joe, we're out of time, would you believe? We went through the interview. We'd like to have you back, you know, after the election, talk about how you are adapting to the situation, whatever
Sure.
it is.
Anytime.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank
I
you for the
appreciate-
opportunity.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.